When I was 14, I was sold into the Qin family and became the child bride of young Master Qin, who was only 9 years old. The young master was arrogant and domineering, despising my appearance and always making things difficult for me. In winter, he wanted live fish. In summer, he demanded ice. In autumn, he disliked falling leaves. And in spring, he hated fresh flowers. I kept thinking about the 10 taels of silver and endured everything until 5 years later, the Qin family was massacred in one night. I walked away from the ruins into the countryside and from the borderlands back to the capital. When the Qin family was exonerated and the emperor arranged a marriage, the news was all over the place. On the day he was full of pride and ready to marry a new bride, I handed him the 10 taels of silver I had painstakingly saved and said, "Master, I want to go home. May you have smooth days from now on." But he suddenly changed his usual cold demeanor and fiercely threw the silver to the ground. "Wen Qiushui, you've always been my Qin family's wife. You're not going anywhere." The first autumn rain in the capital fell when Qin Qingye returned triumphantly. The young girls in our courtyard chattered excitedly, saying that the procession welcoming him stretched down the entire street, with many young women throwing flowers at him. "Our young master is handsome, and he's just returned after achieving great merit, so naturally, he's the center of attention. Hey, have you heard? Chancellor Zhou has petitioned the emperor to arrange a marriage for his daughter. Could it be with our young master?" They lowered their voices in unison, almost whispering. "But Miss Wen is still here. How could the young master marry Miss Zhou?" One of the girls said indignantly, but was quickly interrupted by the others. "Don't meddle in your master's business." She fell silent, muttering, "Miss Wen is so ill. Why hasn't the young master come to see her?" I stared blankly at the floral-patterned bedrail, knowing that Qin Qingye would never come. He despised me, and since I was too young to make decisions for myself, he never wanted to see me. Now, busy as he was, he had surely forgotten all about me, someone who should have been cast aside long ago. I suppressed the bitterness rising in my throat, feeling the familiar ache in my left leg. "It must be the rain. Shall he?" "Yes, miss." The maid had already put on a calm expression, showing no hint of dissatisfaction in front of me. She said, "The young master just returned, but the emperor summoned him, so it's hard for him to come see you. Please don't be too upset." I smiled faintly, nodding as an acknowledgement. "Miss, eat something, take your medicine, and the young master will come back." She kept chattering as Qin Qingye's servant hurried into the room. "Miss, the young master told me to pass a message. He won't be back tonight, so don't wait for him." I blinked, suddenly reminded that we hadn't seen each other in 5 months. He puffed her cheeks, looking quite displeased. "Where has the young master gone?" He. I gently stopped her, then turned to the servant and said, "Tell the young master I know." He didn't leave, instead standing there watching me. "Miss, don't you have anything else to say?" I thought for a moment, then added, "If the young master comes back, no matter how late, please tell him to come find me." I turned my head and saw the small box I had carefully placed on the dressing table. Inside were the things I had guarded like my lifeblood all these years. "Just tell him I have something to say." The servant let out a breath and, shaking slightly, smiled. "Don't worry, I'll deliver it." Before he could vanish out of sight, I quickly grabbed Xiaohe's hand and instructed her. "Go after him. Just say, if the young master is busy, there's no rush." Xiaohe bit her lip and nodded, hurrying outside. To my surprise, almost as soon as the meal was placed on the table, I heard Xiaohe's exclamation. "The young master is back." It was just getting dark outside. My heart sank. I hadn't even set down my chopsticks when Qin Qingye pushed open the door and strode in. He had tanned quite a bit since a few months ago, and when he wasn't smiling, he looked somewhat intimidating. I silently compared him to the soft, pale bundle of a boy from childhood and felt he had changed a lot. He sat directly across from me, staring intently at me with a frown, as if displeased. "Do you have something to say to me?" When he asked, I didn't know how to respond. Months ago, we had fought terribly, and the next day, Qin Qingye had gone off to battle. Now, he had finally returned home, but I still didn't want him to be upset. So, I changed the subject. Have you eaten? Chun Xingye still stared at me with a heavy gaze. Say what you need to say now. He seemed extremely annoyed and rubbed his forehead, not speaking anymore. I put down my chopsticks as well, thinking that the salt and pepper chicken tonight must taste really good. What a pity I couldn't have a bite. I picked up the box I had been preparing for a long time and brought it before him. Young master. Chun Xingye suddenly looked up at me, and I could have sworn I heard his teeth grind together. I ignored his gaze, and though it had been 5 months, this was something that had to be said. I steeled myself and opened the box in my hands. This was given to me by the late madam. She said it was for her daughter-in-law. Since it's a Chun family heirloom, it's inappropriate for me to keep it. I pushed the box forward, not looking up at him. Also, here are 10 taels of silver. I inhaled deeply, pushing through the stabbing pain in my leg before I spoke. Young master, I want to go home. For the first time that night, Chun Xingye smiled. Wen Xiaoshui, do you still have a home? Your father sold you to me a long time ago. Don't you remember? I lowered my head. Of course I remembered. All these years, he had always said I owed him 10 taels of silver. That was the price I was sold to his family for. I was only worth 10 taels. So now, I'm giving it back to you. Chun Xingye seemed unwilling to waste any more words with me. He stood up, took the bracelet from the box, and bent over to forcefully put it on my wrist. It hurt a little, and I shrank back. Chun Xingye's breath was right next to my ear, and I could feel his anger burning near me. Wen Xiaoshui, you've always been my Qin family's wife. You can't go anywhere. After the bed curtains fell, I tried to struggle, but he had already pinned my left leg down with his hand, and I couldn't move. His hand was warm, pressing slowly from my ankle to my knee, again and again. Young master. Wen Xiaoshui, he said, not even lifting his head. You don't need to speak. I closed my mouth, then closed my eyes, pretending to sleep. Perhaps because Chun Xingye was nearby, the rainy night didn't feel as unbearable. I ended up truly falling asleep. In the last moment before my consciousness faded, I heard him call my name. Xiaoshui, it's raining. For a moment, I forgot where we were. I vaguely reached out and touched his back. I said, Young master, it's okay. I'm here. I thought this rain was really heavy. It was dripping down my face. I really hated the rain. Get out. At the age of 14, I first entered the Chun residence. The young master was throwing a tantrum, refusing to go to school. With a loud bang, a beautiful glass vase shattered at my feet. I followed the sound and saw Chun Xingye for the first time. He looked at me with his beautiful eyes, then quickly turned his gaze away. Tisk, he said, another ugly freak. Don't arrange for her to stay in my room. He crossed his arms and gave orders about where I should go. Young master, this is the daughter of the Wen family, the woman who led me in said with a smile. Wen family? The young master widened his eyes as if seeing a ghost. This is the wife my mother arranged for me? He started running toward the door, and just as he was about to disappear around the corner, he suddenly turned and grabbed my hand. He was half a head shorter than me, and just slightly tilting his head allowed me to see his eyelashes. I thought to myself, this young master of the Qin family is really handsome. He hasn't suffered any hardship. Don't look at me. I stumbled slightly, realizing his temper was bad, and thought to myself again. Mother, he called loudly from a distance. I had already met Madame Chen, so I simply bowed. Xiaoshui is here. I won't marry her. Chun Xingye, still out of breath from running, released my hand. I won't marry an ugly freak. Madame Chen's face immediately turned cold. Apologize. She pulled my hand and stood in front of Chun Xingye, repeating, apologize. Chun Xingye widened his eyes as if he hadn't expected her to be angry, but he just turned his head and said nothing. I smiled at Madame Chen. It's okay. It had been okay for me ever since my mother passed away. I'd said it's okay too many times. But Madame Chen's eyes reddened. She called for the family rules and Chun Xingye was punished and couldn't get out of bed. Our first meeting was unpleasant, and the following years were just as bad. It would take me a long time to understand this truth. From that day on, I was arranged to stay in the room next to Chinchingye's. I tried to do some light work, but it seemed like everyone in the house treated it as a huge problem and often said it was impossible. So, I ended up with nothing to do, and going to school with the young master became my only task every day. Chinchingye hated school, and he hated me. The servants in the yard were afraid to provoke him, but I still had to gather the courage to open his door and tell him to go to school. One Xiao Shui. Do you understand the difference between men and women? Chinchingye bit his teeth and glared at me because I had just lifted his blanket. Qingye, you should go to school now. The young master turned red, glaring at me like a little beast, yelling loudly, When Xiao Shui, who gave you permission to call me by my name? Madam. He jumped out of bed and dressed quickly, standing in front of me and saying, Don't call me by my name. I calmly looked at him. I'm your fiancé. It's only right for me to call you by your name. He got angry again, suddenly pushing me backward. A sharp pain shot through my waist, and the carved edge of the bed made me want to cry. Wen Xiao Shui, don't use that ridiculous marriage contract to pressure me. I warn you, you're sold to my family by your father. I don't recognize that marriage contract. You are just here to serve me, no different from anyone else. Got it? Seeing that it was almost time for school, I casually dismissed him. Got it. Qingye, go to school. You're not allowed to call me by my name. Chinchingye was extremely stubborn about not allowing me to call him by his name. I treated him like a half-grown child and deliberately teased him, making him jump up in anger every time, until he got someone he loved. The first time Chinchingye lost his temper with me was in the 4th year after I entered the Qin residence. That year I was 18. Madame Qin treated me like her own daughter and entrusted me with all the affairs of the large Qin household. One afternoon, she smiled as she handed me the family heirloom jade bracelet. Xiao Shui, after the new year, we'll arrange your marriage with Qingye. I held the bracelet and nodded, agreeing. Even though Chinchingye didn't like me, it didn't matter much to me. I would fulfill my duties as a good wife, help him manage the family business, and take care of his parents. But Chinchingye refused. He had grown taller and no longer just used words to express his unwillingness. He knelt in front of the ancestral hall, refusing food and water for 2 days straight. I brought him a meal box to check on him, but he slapped it to the ground. When Xiao Shui, I won't marry you. He had the appearance of a young man now, and his eyes were full of hatred when he looked at me. I felt an inexplicable sense of unease. Qingye, marriage is a matter for our parents to decide. I'll treat you well. I offered him a pale comfort. I told you not to call my name. He raised his voice. I have someone I like, Xiao Shui. I'll find you a good family and marry you off. Isn't that what you want? You don't have to marry me. Just consider this me begging you, Xiao Shui. Please ask Madame Qin. I really can't marry you. At that moment, I thought to myself, the young master would never back down. Even when he deliberately made things difficult for me as a child, like when he demanded live fish during winter and made me go to the lake to catch them, I ended up getting sick from the cold because I couldn't catch the fish. That time, Madame Qin had punished him severely and locked him in the ancestral hall for 3 days without food. He lay in bed just as long as I did when I was sick. Even then, he never apologized to me. But now, with his eyes red, he was begging me. I said, all right, I'll try. Madame Qin sighed and pressed me to the table to eat. Xiao Shui, you can't always give in to him,
she said.
I failed. After I collapsed from hunger, the young master still didn't relent. From that point on, Madame Qin strictly kept him confined. He wasn't allowed to go out except for school, and no one in the house helped him, so he started knocking on my door. I often think back to his expression that day. It was so hard for him to speak. Xiao Shui, there's a lantern festival in the street today. I'll take you to see it. His expression was so fake, as if someone had a knife to his neck, forcing him to say something he couldn't. But I still said, all right. I don't remember what the Lantern Festival looked like that day. In the noisy crowd, all I remember was his expression. Gentle, soft, uncertain. For many years after, I hoped he would smile at me like that. But he never did. He only smiled like that at one person, Miss Zhou Meisheng. That day, the Lantern Festival ended early because the weather turned bad and it began to rain lightly. I think I started to hate rainy days from that day on. That day, I stood at the street corner, watching my future husband hold an umbrella for someone else. He smiled gently, as if he would offer everything to her, just because she needed it. In that moment, my heart melted into a lake, and it began to rain inside it too. I turned and walked in the opposite direction, heading back to the residence. A servant came up to me and asked, "Miss, why are you crying?" I smiled. "It's just the rain. I didn't bring an umbrella." I really hated the rain. When Chen Xingye returned to the residence, he was in a good mood, even bringing me osmanthus cakes for the first time. "Wen Xiao Shui, this is for you." Chen Xingye didn't like these cakes, so I assumed Miss Zhou liked them. "Thank you, young master. I don't really like osmanthus cakes." He frowned and looked me over. "Are you sick?" I shook my head and said I was going back first. From that day on, I no longer called him by his name. The bracelet Madame Chen had given me, I carefully put away. The 10 taels of silver my father had taken were still something I needed to save up for. I thought Miss Zhou really is very beautiful. She is the girl Chen Xingye dreams of marrying. I didn't want him to be unhappy. After the new year, I returned the silver and left the Chen residence. But neither of us expected that things would change so quickly. As the 12th month approached, Chen Xingye became increasingly restless. Every day, he stood by my door, repeatedly saying, "Wen Xiao Shui, when are you going to tell Madame Chen?" I coldly continued stitching the clothes in my hands, replying, "Today." "Today?" He paused for a moment, turned around, and walked a few steps in the courtyard, talking to himself. "Today, isn't that too soon?" Tomorrow is fine too." I snapped the silk thread and said, "Madame Chen has already begun preparing for the wedding. If we don't speak now, it will be too late." The most important thing was that I had saved up 10 taels of silver. Returning it to the Chen family wasn't nearly enough, but it was a gesture of goodwill. For once, Chen Xingye quieted down. He pointed at the clothes in my hands and asked, "Is this mine?" I spread the clothes out and asked him, "Do you want it?" Since I arrived at the Chen residence, I had made him new clothes every new year, but he never wanted them. At first, he said they were ugly, and later, it just became a habit. It seemed like he hadn't thought I would ask him that. Chen Xingye hesitated for a while before saying, "All right, let it be a farewell gift." I said, "All right." As dusk approached, we stood up and headed toward the main hall. The atmosphere at the dinner table was strange. The master and madam didn't say they agreed, nor did they disagree. They just sat silently. In the end, they left me alone. "Xiao Shui, you want to leave the Chen family, don't you?" Madam Chen asked gently. "Yes." She softly said, "Xiao Shui, your mother and I were close friends. She passed away too early, and you've suffered a lot. I had originally thought that if things settled down, the Chen family could also be your home." But, with a sharp crack, I stepped on a broken branch on the ground. "Well, what's going on?" Chen Xingye walked around me, asking again, "Did you tell Madame Chen?" I looked up at him, thinking about what Madame Chen had said. She mentioned the power struggles at court and how the Chen family had chosen the wrong side, with no way to turn things around. She spoke of an uncle in the northern frontier who could ensure Chen Xingye's safety. She told me to think it over, and if I didn't want to, I could leave at any time. In the end, she had red eyes as she said, "Xiao Shui, help the Chen family, help Xingye." I agreed. Madame Chen arranged for us to leave the next day, so I asked Chen Xingye, "Do you want to leave the residence?" "Leave? Where are we going?" "To see Miss Zhou." "Of course." Chen Xingye agreed. He eagerly packed a bunch of odd little things like a wooden carved bird, glass marbles, and colorful jade stones. He shyly showed them to me, saying, I've saved up for a long time to buy these. They're for Ame, as a token of my feelings. For some reason, I thought, why would he give her jade stones? His eyes were 100 times more beautiful than these stones, full of pure affection. Miss Zhou was no stranger to me now. She called me Miss Wen. I nodded. She was a year younger than Qingye, but had already grown into a graceful beauty. Qingye, is this for me? Qingye didn't dare touch her hand. He simply placed the jade stone on her handkerchief in her palm. He said, Ame, what I said before is always true. I slightly turned my head, and I found the light reflected from the jade stones so blinding, it made me want to cry. After sending Miss Zhou off, Qingye hummed a song and walked ahead of me. Qiu Shui, thank you. I won't mistreat you. All my private savings are yours, and you don't need to repay the 10 taels of silver you owe my family. I'll buy you a house and even a piece of forest. From now on, let's call each other brother and sister. How about that? That was the last thing Qingye said to me before I saw the fire. I said, all right. Then the memory became a blur. In the distance, I saw the black smoke engulfing the Chen residence. The master, madam, and over 100 people in the household died inside. A notice was posted on the street saying that the Chen family had been involved in treason and that the entire family had committed suicide. Only the youngest son had escaped, and the entire city was searching for him. We became fugitives. I carried Qingye, who was crying and nearly unconscious, and disguised ourselves as siblings fleeing from the disaster. Without looking back at the ruins behind us, we staggered out of the city gate. I took Qingye along the small path, carrying a man on my back, which was always a bit inconvenient. I set him down and went to find some water. When I returned, he had already woken up. My father wouldn't commit treason. He stubbornly looked at me and said, I poured the water into his mouth. Can you walk? I want to go back and see the emperor, clear my father's name. I ignored him and picked up the young master, who hadn't eaten for 2 days and couldn't walk, and started walking again. Save your strength. The emperor won't see you. You'll be killed by the guards at the city gate. At first, he struggled, saying he wanted to go back and die with his parents, but soon he fell silent and finally leaned against my shoulder. Tears dripped onto my clothes one by one. Wen Qiu Shui, am I the only one left with you? I remained silent. Why don't you leave? Change your identity, and no one will trouble you anymore. I adjusted his position on my back. I still haven't returned the 10 taels of silver to you. He stiffened. I don't want it anymore. There's no reason to owe anyone. It seemed he had calmed down a bit. He lowered his head again, and the tears were no longer falling from his face. Then we've agreed. You'll return the money before you leave. I'm very poor, and I really need that 10 taels. We walked for more than half a month, mostly taking mountain paths. We sold everything we had, and the food we got was barely enough for the 2 of us to eat a little each day. Before the food ran out, I found a rabbit's nest. I had originally planned to catch one to fill our stomachs, but an unfortunate mistake led me to fall into a large trap. It was a hunting trap. When I woke up, I was lying on a warm bed. A bearded man was laughing as he patted Qingye's shoulder, and Qingye shook slightly but tried to suppress his laughter. Little lady, you're awake? Your husband was really worried about you. The kind woman helped me sit up and gave me some water. Thank you. She waved her hand and said, What are you thanking me for? That trap was set by my family. I'm really sorry you got hurt. I said it was all right. Qiu Shui, does it hurt? Qingye turned and looked at me, his gaze full of worry as he examined my leg. It's fine. He sat next to me, still concerned. Your bones almost broke, and you're still saying it's fine. But my thoughts were on something else. It won't delay our journey. I tried to push myself up with my arm, but he coldly pressed me back down. Rest a bit more before we leave. The woman also came forward to persuade me. Your leg needs to heal properly, or it might leave a permanent injury. Little lady, don't worry, take your time. You can leave after the new year. It's not too late. When the new year came, the roads became easier, and there were more animals on the mountain. We no longer had to suffer as much. I thought about it and agreed. Then it's troublesome for you. By the way, sister, I smiled and added, we're not husband and wife, we're siblings. My brother is shy, so please don't say that, he'll be embarrassed. Chun Chingye's face darkened, and he silently went out to chop wood. Huh? But it was young master himself who said that you're married. We felt a bit embarrassed about eating and drinking at their house without paying. So during the day, Chun Chingye followed the bearded man to the mountain to hunt, and I helped the woman with some needlework. At night, Chun Chingye and I slept in the same room. Your leg is injured. It's really inconvenient for sister to help. I can take care of you. I frowned and refuted him. There's a difference between men and women. He slept on the outer side of the bed, fully clothed. If you need anything, just call me. Days passed, and when my leg had nearly healed, the new year arrived. The bearded man bought some wine, and after a month of tough living, Chun Chingye had become a little stronger. He sat face to face with the bearded man, drinking one cup after another. The woman quietly said to me, my husband taught young master some good skills, so you don't have to worry about going hungry on the road anymore. Both of them were simple people. They knew we had escaped, but didn't ask many questions. They were considerate and gave us a lot, for which I was very grateful. Sister, thank you. What for? The bearded man had drunk too much and was being scolded by the woman, so she had to help him back to the house. Chun Chingye had drunk quite a bit too, sitting there dazedly, staring at me. I walked over and pulled him up. Let's go back to the room. He sat there unmoving and asked me, Chiu Shui, is today New Year's Day? I said yes. Then why isn't there any fireworks? In past years at the Chun residence, the young master would have already been pulling fireworks one after another, but now in this desolate mountain, where would there be fireworks? But he stared at me, and I couldn't think of anything else to say. I took him outside to sober up and took a lit candle with me. I struck a fire stick and coaxed him. Here, this is a firecracker. Drunk people are too obedient. He happily took the fire stick, lit it, and watched the candle burn slowly. He didn't ask why it wasn't loud or why it didn't light up. He just sat there, waiting for the candle to burn out completely. He turned to me and said, Chiu Shui, Happy New Year. The night was dark, but his eyes sparkled like a bright gemstone. So I leaned forward, lightly holding his hand and giving it a little shake. Happy New Year. After the 7th day of the new year, we officially bid farewell to the couple. Sister gave me a large bundle of food, and the big bearded man grabbed Chun Chingye, telling him to come back often. Sister insisted on giving me the money from selling her embroidery, and the big bearded man gave Chun Chingye the money he earned from hunting. We couldn't refuse and promised to repay them if we ever had the chance. Even though we both knew that repayment was a distant prospect, we still made the promise. Chun Chingye shoved the money into my pocket and gave it a pat. Take it, he said. On the 15th day, despite my protests, Chun Chingye dragged me into the city. He said, there are lanterns today. I wasn't particularly fond of lantern festivals, but seeing his excitement, I didn't oppose him. I have to admit, the lanterns at the festival were beautiful. I stared for a moment at a rabbit lantern with moving ears and ended up losing 100 copper coins. I regretted it and quietly complained to Chun Chingye. Young master, we're not the same as before. He frowned as he looked at me through the crowd and asked, don't you find it strange calling me young master now? We were dressed in rough cloth, our faces weathered from the journey. Calling him that indeed felt strange. I muttered, I won't call you that anymore. Then what should I be called? I thought for a moment. Hey! Chun Chingye didn't talk to me the entire night. Before we left the city, he bought a horse and sent a letter at the post station. It seemed to be a letter to Miss Zhou, expressing longing. Looking at the rabbit lantern in my hand, I thought it was just an excuse. Once we left the city, Chun Chingye made me mount the horse while he led it ahead. Why aren't you getting on? This horse isn't valuable. If 2 people ride it, it won't make it to the northern border. I covered the horse's ears and said, then we'll take turns riding it. He sneered, stop talking nonsense. Just get on when I tell you to. With a little more money, The young master had developed a bit of a temper. I stopped responding to him and quietly moved forward. I quietly asked, "Are you close to your uncle?" "I've already forgotten what he looks like." "Then can he take us in?" Chun Xingye turned his head and glanced at me, then said he could. I was still worried. I felt that the northern border was harsh and cold, and no one would pay for my embroidery. How long would it take to save up 10 taels of silver? Prices were rising quickly. While I was thinking, whoosh, an arrow barely grazed my cheek and embedded itself in a tree trunk ahead. It was the pursuers. Instinctively, I shielded Chun Xingye, but he flipped over and protected me behind him. "Go!" The horse, as if obeying an order, bolted forward, and I was jolted around so much I almost vomited. "Young master, we won't get far with 2 people." Chun Xingye didn't hesitate, dropping the horse and grabbing my hand, running. "Be quiet. We'll find a cave to hide." I agreed, lifting my slightly sore left leg and quietly following him. "Young master, if we're found, I'll lead them away. You go first." I took off the money pouch and handed it to him, but he didn't take it. "When Qiushui, I'll say it once, we leave together." He was just a boy 5 years younger than me, but his words carried an air of authority. I thought, this must be the growth that comes with heartbreak. After a night of scrambling, we crawled out of the cave. I didn't dare to return to the city, but Chun Xingye insisted on buying a horse. I refused stubbornly, and he carried me on his back. As I lay on his back, I thought, he really has become an adult. Eventually, we were caught up with, but thankfully, we were already on the northern border. From a distance, we saw tall horses standing ahead, and the people behind no longer seemed hopeful of catching us. I turned my head to look and saw the leader drawing his bow. The next second, the arrow shot toward Chun Xingye with the intention to kill. I don't know where the strength came from, but I stepped forward and pushed him down, pinning him beneath me. Thud. It was my unfortunate left leg again. The pain rendered me speechless. Chun Xingye wasn't wrong. His uncle hardly ever saw him. Except for the first time when he lifted us up like little chicks and threw us into a side room, simply treating my wound, he never came back. But I had a severe fever. I was still thinking about giving him the money pouch. Chun Xingye shoved the money pouch back into my hands and went to kneel in the main hall for an entire day. 2 doctors came, one attended to him, and the other attended to me. Thankfully, we both survived, though my legs still often hurt. I didn't know what Chun Xingye said to his uncle, but after I saw him once when I opened my eyes, I didn't see him much anymore. However, he would return at night and sleep on the outside of the bed, fully dressed. Chun Xingye. Do you go out to fight every day?" He turned over and faced me, asking, "What do you want to say?" "You smell strongly of medicine." He closed his eyes again. "That's the medicine you smell. How could that be? It's clearly you." Chun Xingye lost patience. "Do you want to eat crab roe puff?" "Yes." "All right, I'll bring it to you tomorrow." The northern border is cold and harsh. There's only meat and alcohol, no crab roe puff. Chun Xingye just used it as a way to shut me up. In frustration, I kicked him hard. Just as I was about to retract my leg, he caught it. "Does it hurt?" He gently squeezed my calf. "Don't get hurt again, Qiushui." I stiffened, silently pulling my leg back and turning over to sleep. The next day, there was a small crab roe puff on my table with a little girl standing beside it.
She said her name was He.
"Young master sent me to take care of the young lady. If you need anything, just tell me." I asked her where Chun Xingye went every day. The little girl whispered, "Young master gets held down and beaten every day." I sat back down at the table, not responding to He's words. Since he didn't want me to look for him, then I wouldn't. "Miss, try the crab roe puff." Young master went to every house asking, and finally found a master who could make this trendy pastry. Did the master make this? He secretly smiled. Young master made it himself. That evening, I told Chun Xingye that the crab roe puff was delicious and casually asked when I could move out. Chun Xingye bent down and carefully examined my leg wound. "There's no extra room. Then I'll live with He." Chun Qingye furrowed his brow. What would you do living there? Now you don't need me to call you to go study, nor do you need me to serve you. What would we live together for? Chun Qingye clenched his fists and gritted his teeth, saying each word slowly. You haven't repaid me the 10 taels of silver. I said, I understood. I'll find a way. Do as you please. Chun Qingye lay on the bed, looking annoyed. When summer came, I was able to get out of bed and walk a little. Chun Qingye would return around noon. He'd lean on the railing and order me to walk around the yard. He had grown some more, and his already beautiful eyes had a sharper, more intense look after his training. Standing in front of me, he was a full head taller. Have you grown taller? He seemed to smile. I'll grow more. Then he easily picked me up and placed me under the corridor. Don't walk too long. It's not good for your recovery. He always smelled heavily of medicine. He said he was always badly injured. Chun Qingye, is your uncle really your biological uncle? Who could treat someone so badly? He smiled and handed me a delicate little knife. The blade was sharp, gleaming brightly. Shui, happy birthday. I thought to myself, he really doesn't know how to give gifts. Why not give me a colorful jade stone instead? Chun Qingye had been beaten on the training field for over half a year, and when he finally went to the battlefield, he was still quite frightened. After throwing up, he developed a fever. He slept drowsily while I kept putting cold towels on him, but his temperature still wouldn't go down. I was truly worried, so I ordered He to find a doctor, only to be told that the general forbade anyone from calling for a doctor. The general was Chun Qingye's uncle. I was furious and stormed toward the main hall. Chunjua was sitting at the head of the table, calmly watching me. One Shui, right? I gritted my teeth, standing there without bowing. He smiled slightly. The matter of your marriage with Qingye has already been settled. But life is unpredictable. You've stayed with Qingye all this time, and you've done enough. By now, it's time for you to leave. I felt as though a bucket of cold water had been thrown over me, unsure of what to say. I'll leave once he's better. She's not leaving. I turned suddenly, and the man who seemed like he was about to pass out was now standing, supporting himself on the doorframe. His face was flushed, but his words were unquestionable. She's not leaving. Chunjua slammed his cup down hard. Don't forget what you promised me.
Yes.
I promised I would go to the battlefield like a man. I'll return to the capital. I'll clear my parents' names. Chun Qingye stumbled and kneeled beside me. When Shui stays with me. He lifted his gaze and said to the man at the head, when Shui must stay with me. Qingye, those who achieve great things cannot have weaknesses. Do you understand? Chun Qingye pulled my hand and stood up. He whispered, Uncle, I'll get better soon. I'll do everything I promised you. Chun Qingye's body was burning with fever, and yet he was unreasonable, blaming me. Who told you to run out and meet him? I was worried about him and also frustrated, so I didn't say a word. He became even angrier. Cough, cough, cough.
Hey.
Are you listening to me? I heard you, young master.
Please don't be angry.
Chun Qingye's eyes seemed like they were about to pop out, but he had no strength left. So he just collapsed back onto the bed and said, when Shui. I leaned over to listen. Does your leg hurt? It's a cloudy day today. I suddenly felt a lump in my throat and climbed into bed beside him. Young master, you're burning like a furnace. He spoke slowly. Oh, then let me warm you up. We cuddled together and slept soundly until He came to wake him up to take his medicine. He looked a bit embarrassed. Did I say something foolish? I nodded. You were calling for your mother in your sleep. Do I really look like Madam Chen? Chun Qingye was embarrassed and angry. My mother. She's so beautiful. I got it. Drink your medicine. I said, still feeling a little indignant. After settling him back down to sleep, I got up and opened the door for Chunjua. The man studied me under the moonlight, smiling after a long pause. Shui, you really look a lot like your mother. I looked up at him. I'm not leaving. Chunjua didn't mind my boldness and smiled as he replied, my younger brother, his wife, and your mother grew up together. When your mother was your age, she also insisted on marrying the person she liked. You really take after her, stubborn and unwilling to turn back until you hit a wall." He continued, "Qiushui, the path Qingye has chosen is too difficult and exhausting. Staying by his side won't be easy." He looked at me with a smile, as if watching someone else. "Compared to Qingye, I care more about your life. Wouldn't it be better for you to live a little easier, like your mother wanted for you?" I shook my head. "I want to stay by his side." Chunzhua was silent for a long time, his eyes shining with something I couldn't quite understand. After a while, he let out a soft laugh. "Then that's fine. Those who live by the sword and spear often have something they care about. That's a good thing." He looked at me for a long time, and when I became slightly impatient and looked up, he finally turned and walked away. It was as though he was bidding farewell to a long-lost dream. He said, "If you ever run into trouble, come to the northern border to find me." After a serious illness, Chun Qingye rose again, becoming the ruthless young master of the battlefield. No longer was he beaten by others, and I was able to go to the training grounds to watch him practice martial arts. The following year, the barbarians invaded, and the emperor sent the crown prince to lead the troops. The entire court was shaken by this. It was said that the emperor favored the fifth prince, and the crown prince had already lost favor. The barbarians were vicious, and the crown prince was weak. It seemed unlikely he would survive this battle. During the battle, Chun Qingye broke 2 ribs and took an arrow to the chest, but he fiercely protected the crown prince behind him. When he was brought back, his entire body was covered in blood, and I could barely make out his face. Xiao He stood behind me, blocking me from approaching. "Miss, you can't go now. Let the doctor take a look first." My mind was in chaos, and I said, "No, I have to go in. The smell of blood is too strong. Miss, you can't go." Chunzhua walked out. "Let her in." Qiushui, call his name. I knelt beside the bed, too afraid to touch even a part of him. He looked like he wasn't breathing, and the blood on him was more than I had ever seen in my life. Plop, plop. Tears fell onto his body. "Chun Qingye, please don't scare me. Open your eyes, look at me, I'm Qiushui." I babbled a lot of things, circling around it, but still saying, "I still owe you 10 taels of silver, don't die." "Qingye, Qingye, open your eyes and look at me. Don't go, don't leave me." The doctor used a decoction to keep his life hanging by a thread. I stayed by the bed all night, waiting until dawn broke. Blood bubbles started to appear in his mouth again. My tears surged out instantly, and just as I was about to call for help, he grabbed my finger. I leaned over to listen. "When Qiushui, I remember I tore my pants. You really are petty." The day I moved into the Qin family, the young master set a trap to make me jump into it, but before I could even get close, he fell from a tree, tore his pants, and ran back to the house on his own. I laughed at him for a long time, and I still laugh about it today. 10 taels of silver, you remember, miser. Osmanthus cake, I specially bought it for you. My tears stopped flowing then. Chun Qingye slightly raised his hand and touched my lips. He said, "Qiushui, I'm sorry. I should have treated you better. In the future, I'll make it up to you. I'll make it up to you all." My tears flowed uncontrollably again. I wanted to ask if that meant I didn't have to repay him the 10 taels, if I didn't have to leave anymore, if he liked me too. But he woke up too briefly, and I couldn't ask a single question. Yet the lake in my heart no longer rained. Instead, it turned into small gems, shining brightly. Chun Qingye recovered for 6 months. Though he was recovering, once he could walk, he would go out every day, busy with something I didn't know. He would return at night for dinner. On his 17th birthday, I gave him a safety charm. Every stitch and thread was done by hand. I knelt in front of the Buddha, praying for divine protection, hoping for his safety. Chun Qingye solemnly tucked it into the inner pocket of his chest and said to me, "Qiushui, I won't make you wait too long." I nodded. We spent another new year together with Chunzhua. Chun Qingye said that his uncle had been alone for many years, and at first, he didn't intend to make things difficult for us. But he only said those few words in praise of Qinzhua and didn't stay for even a second longer. That year, he gave me a small sleeve arrow. Do you like it? He didn't even look at me, just shoved the gift into my hands and ran to the window to look at the scenery. As if he didn't care about my answer at all. He repeatedly taught me until I hit a rabbit for the first time. He bent down and kissed my lips. Qiushui, you're really amazing. I stood there in a daze, wondering if there was something wrong with my heart, beating so fast. The following year, the emperor fell seriously ill. The fifth prince rose in rebellion, and the crown prince sent a pigeon to order Qinzhou to return to the palace to rescue the emperor. They won a great victory. The emperor passed away, and the crown prince successfully ascended the throne. Qinzhou was promoted. That year he was 19 and I was 24. He and I sat in the carriage, swaying, dreaming. Qinzhou occasionally lifted the curtain to look at me, and I drowsily exchanged glances with him. Young master. He still looked cold. You should sleep less, your brain is getting slow from all that rest. I felt that he wasn't as cute as when he was younger, but I didn't argue with him. A few months later, we arrived in the capital. We moved into the Qin family's original courtyard. The emperor also granted us the neighboring courtyard for Qinzhou, making it a grand affair. The next day, He told me that rumors were spreading all over the city. They say, the young master is going to marry. It's the daughter of the Zhou family. Zhou Meisheng. I stood frozen in place. Raindrops were falling heavily. It was already spring. I wanted to talk to Qinzhou, but he was really busy. He didn't even sleep in the same room as me anymore, even at night. I finally caught him at the door, but all I could see was his tired expression. Something wrong? He asked. I gathered my courage and asked, where are you sleeping? He smiled and lowered his head, whispering in my ear, Qiushui, men and women are different. I watched him walk out the door, and he didn't come back for several days. During these days, I met a familiar person. Miss Zhou. Miss Wen. Zhou Meisheng was even more beautiful than before. She gently spoke. Miss Wen, you've done a lot for Qingyue, but kindness is always just kindness. Do you understand? I didn't understand, but since she was here telling me this, I assumed she understood. So I nodded. She smiled again. Now that my father is the prime minister, I'm marrying into the family. This is also the emperor's will. But Miss Wen, I will treat you well. You have never treated me poorly. She slightly turned her body, and I saw that familiar jade pendant hanging from her waist. It was clear and transparent, just like it was back then. I don't remember how I sent her out, or how I ended up sitting in front of the table, staring blankly. I hadn't seen Qinzhou for a long time, and I had forgotten what he said about not making me wait too long. Was he waiting for me to express my feelings for him? Or was he waiting for his official position to be restored so I could leave? Now that I think about it, it was the latter. He served me dinner, looking somewhat worried. Miss, the young master must have his reasons. I smiled faintly. What reasons did Qinzhou have? All these years, I had mistaken our bond for love. He just couldn't bring himself to say no. It was me who had been wrong all along. He, is the young master not coming back tonight? He hesitated for a moment, then said, the young master went to the Zhou residence tonight. Miss, let's rest early. I fell into a heavy sleep, feeling uneasy in my dream, as if something was weighing down on my chest, like a huge stone pressing on me. It made it hard for me to breathe. When I opened my eyes, I saw a handsome face so close. Young master. Qinzhou was still half asleep, and I couldn't push him off. Qinzhou. He groggily opened his eyes and asked what I wanted. I need to talk. He reached out, holding my left leg gently, rubbing it. Go ahead. You're getting married. I want to leave. Qinzhou's hand froze, and he opened his eyes, asking, leave where? I pulled my leg away, sat up straight, and looked at him. 5 years ago, you told me to leave. Don't you remember? Qinzhou's breath quickened. I already spoke to Madame Qin back then. She said if I wanted to leave, I could leave anytime. When Qiushui, I interrupted him. After that, I went with you to the northern border. You don't have to thank me. It was Madam Chen who asked me. Chen family has treated me well, and I repay their kindness. It's only right that I treat you well. He suddenly threw the covers off and stood up. Fine. Wen Qiushui, you're repaying me, right? I closed my eyes. Since I came to the Qin family, I've been under the Qin family's protection for 5 years, receiving 5 years of kindness. From the northern border to the capital, I've been with you for 5 years. We should be even now. The more I spoke, the quieter my voice became, because Chen Qingye looked like he was about to cry from anger. He clenched his fists so tightly that they creaked, and smoke seemed to rise from his head in fury. Wen Qiushui, don't even think about it. As long as I'm alive, you'll never leave this door. I was also upset. Why is it always up to you? You tell me to leave, and I have to leave. You tell me to stay, and I have to stay. Your words never make sense. You said we were like siblings, you'd give me private money and buy me a house with a piece of forest. You've forgotten all that. I cried out of grievance. You've forgotten everything you said. Chen Qingye clearly made me furious. His words were harsh.
Yes.
You remember all that, but what about the things you promised? Have you forgotten them too? What did I promise? You promised that I could leave after you paid me back. You owe me 10 taels of silver. I gritted my teeth and looked at him, saying every word clearly. I will pay it back. Then I almost burst into tears. Now, he was a favored official by the emperor, yet he still wanted my 10 taels of silver. He was the one being stingy. Chen Qingye stared at me with wide eyes. When he saw me about to climb out of bed to get the silver, he quickly stepped forward, grabbed me, and pulled me back onto the bed. He said fiercely, Wen Qiushui, we'll talk when we get back. That day, he led the army out on a campaign. He was gone for 5 months and just returned today. I felt warm all over and finally had a good night's sleep. When I opened my eyes, I saw Chen Qingye staring at me. I moved back a little. Why are you staring at me? He reached out to feel my forehead. Xiao, he said you were very sick. Wen Qiushui, if you can't even take care of yourself, where are you planning to go? I swatted his hand away. I can take care of myself. I've always taken care of you. He wasn't angry. Then why are you sick? I was at a loss for words. Wen Qiushui, you're not going anywhere. Chen Qingye pressed his forehead against mine for a moment and said, just stay by my side. I had nowhere to retreat to. You're going to marry someone. I'll marry you. Chen Qingye raised his head, and I saw those clear eyes once again. This time, they contained me. He said, I told you I wouldn't make you wait too long. I stood frozen, unable to speak. Wen Qiushui, you always underestimate me. He sounded somewhat displeased. Is it because I was thoughtless when I was young, and I treated you poorly, so you're going to keep underestimating me for the rest of your life? Perhaps realizing his attitude wasn't right, he came closer and kissed me, muttering, Qiushui, don't leave me. He continued, I might have liked Zhou Meisheng once, but I love you. I won't marry anyone else. The only one who can be my wife is you. Plop. A raindrop fell again, but this time, it didn't fall in my heart. It fell on the corner of my eye. But Zhou Meisheng said everything between us is just gratitude. What she says, do you believe it? Chen Qingye expressed his dissatisfaction loudly. Why don't you believe what I say? I was even angrier. You also said I'm ugly. He chuckled lightly and leaned closer to speak teasingly. My wife is very beautiful. As your husband, I'll add makeup for you every day. The autumn rain had stopped long ago. I heard Chen Qingye softly say, Qiushui, let's get married. I said okay. Chen Qingye, don't make me wait any longer. When spring arrived, Chen Qingye lifted my red veil and called me wife. We went to pay respects to our ancestors. Chen Qingye knelt before the graves of his parents and said he had grown up. Mother, don't worry. I'll treat Qiushui well. Chen Qingye's uncle sent a generous wedding gift, and the letter stated it was for my dowry. Chen Qingye didn't seem dissatisfied. Anyway, from now on, It'll be up to my wife to manage the household. If she gives me money, I'll spend it. If not, I'll starve to death." I laughed at him for being a rogue, and he kissed me as he pinned me down. "Chioshui, don't get sick again." I said okay. He pressed on my left leg again, and "don't get hurt anymore." I placed my palm on his chest and said the same words to him. "You too, don't get hurt." He ordered everyone out and pulled me to the bed. "Chioshui, I promise you. For you, I will definitely come back alive." That same autumn, Prime Minister Zhou was caught embezzling and accepting bribes. The amount was so large it shocked the entire court. Zhou Meisheng sent letters one after another, each one pleading, saying she only wanted to be a stable concubine and hoped I would let her be. Chen Qingye tore up every single one of the letters, and then one night he returned, saying he had dealt with the trouble. Prime Minister Zhou was executed, his male relatives were exiled, and the women were turned into prostitutes. Only Zhou Meisheng was quietly removed from the list and sent to the distant south. Before she left the city, we met. She had fallen into disgrace, but her beauty still shone through. I gave her some money and wished her a safe journey. She held back her tears and thanked me, then asked Chen Qingye, "If back then I hadn't told my father where you were, would you not hate me so much?" Chen Qingye sighed helplessly. "Meisheng, when I sent you that letter, I made it very clear that our fate had ended. This journey is far, and I already have Chioshui by my side. Even if time goes on, please forget the promise and choose another husband. I've never hated you, and I've never thought of marrying you. Meisheng, we had affection when we were young, but I can only do so much. This journey is far. Take care of yourself." I sulked alone in the carriage on the way back. Chen Qingye squeezed my hand and asked, "Why aren't you happy?" I pinched his arm. "Why didn't you give me that beautiful jade? Why only send ugly knives and daggers?" I was so angry. "I knew it. You don't love me that much. What you say is useless." He laughed and pinched my cheek. "When Chioshui, you are unreasonable." I turned away and ignored him. He rested his chin on my shoulder, his voice soft. "Chioshui, you're my root. As long as you live, I'll live. I only have you." I kept my head down and didn't look at him, but he gently pressed his face to mine. "Chioshui, don't be angry anymore. Long ago, we were always each other's one and only. Long ago, I loved you." Extra. Chen Qingye's perspective. After returning to the capital, things were even more troublesome than in the northern frontier. The rumors in the capital were endless. I couldn't sleep with Wen Chioshui for a day unless I married her. The cold bed was unbearable. At least I wouldn't have to wait too long. I planned to tell Wen Chioshui we would be together forever once the weather warmed up. But there were just too many annoying people in this world. Like the emperor. Once the crown prince became emperor, he was no longer my good brother. Chen Zhua had already warned me about this. He was the second most annoying person, but that's another story. Back to the emperor. He wasn't my good brother anymore, which I could understand. But he wanted me to marry Zhou Meisheng to stabilize the court, which I couldn't understand. I entered the palace and waited for him in front of the great hall. On my knees. I knelt there all day until he finally allowed me to enter and continue kneeling. "Your Majesty, I will not marry." The emperor looked somewhat helpless. The throne wasn't easy to sit on, and even though he was young, there was already a trace of weariness on his face. He rubbed his temple. "Qingye, don't make things difficult for me. This is a temporary measure. I've explained it to you clearly. Zhou Cheng's current position isn't something I can just manipulate." I knelt, hearing him throw something at me that hit my shoulder. It hurt, but I didn't dodge. "Your Majesty, I will not marry." He seemed genuinely helpless. "I know. You're fond of Wen Chioshui, and she's not unreasonable. Why don't you marry Zhou Meisheng as a secondary wife, live with her for a few years, and when things settle, you can divorce her? It's just a woman. Why make it so difficult for you?" I raised my head and said seriously, "Your Majesty, I cannot marry Zhou Meisheng. Wen Chioshui is more than just a woman to me. I owe her gratitude, affection, thanks, guilt, and most importantly, love. Your Majesty, I've told you before, I liked Zhou Meisheng when I was young, but she was like a fairy to me. I wanted to hold her, dress her, give her all the good things. But that was all an illusion that shatters with a touch. Qiushui is different. Qiushui is my root. I've grown because of her, and I've become who I am today. With her, there's me. I can give her everything, including my life. Your Majesty, Qiushui is my everything. If I marry Zhou Meisheng, Qiushui might not say anything, but she will surely be unhappy. I fear her unhappiness, and I don't want her to be upset. I smiled, straightened up, and said to the man in front of me, Your Majesty, I will not marry. If you insist, I'll die by crashing my head against the hall today. The emperor was furious, pointing at my nose and cursing, You're threatening me. I stood up, aiming at the pillar. I'm ready. Come here. 2 or 3 eunuchs rushed up and pinned me down. Drag him out and beat him hard. The eunuch cautiously asked, How many lashes, Your Majesty? Beat him until he bleeds. Beat him until he can't get up. Beat him until he can't threaten me anymore. It was rare to see the emperor so angry, and I bled heavily for the first time. My servant, eyes red, said, General, you're badly hurt. Miss Wen will definitely be heartbroken. I gripped him tightly. Don't say it. Take me to the village to rest and heal. Don't tell Wen Qiushui. She cries so much, and if she knows, she'll be in tears again. My pain wasn't for nothing. After a couple of days, the emperor issued an order for me to go to war. If I won, I wouldn't have to marry. The battle was tough, and my injuries hadn't healed by the time I left. I was also in a bad mood because of Wen Qiushui. I threw my pen down, angrily staring at a stack of letters. Why hasn't Wen Qiushui written me even one letter? No one dared to answer. I was really frustrated. She hadn't written even one letter, and how was I supposed to send my 50 letters? On the day of the victory, my servant finally came up with a solution. He asked, General, have you told the madam that you have feelings for her? I was shocked. Wen Qiushui can't feel it. The servant smiled. General, maybe the madam is just waiting. Waiting for you to say it. It dawned on me, and coincidentally, the first autumn rain began. I hurriedly packed up the battlefield and headed home. Someone behind me shouted, Why are you in such a rush, General? I ran wildly down the road, holding 50 letters in my hand. I said, I'm going home. I'm going home to tell my wife. I have feelings for you. You don't have to wait anymore. I won't make you wait again. The end.